So I'm going to jump back into the topic of the open APIs that the S30 exposes. This will repeat some of what Jay has already mentioned, but I think it's good to repeat it a second time. With the opening of the APIs, such as File, JSR75, File.io, and PIM, one of the key things that we want to stress is that you no longer require code signing. So I know there's been a lot of questions and heartaches about code signing. Even if Sprint's offering a free code signing capability for development purposes through the Wireless Toolkit, maybe there was a lack of understanding of how to use that, or maybe you would rather use a different tool set instead of the Sprint Wireless Toolkit. In this case here, this takes you away from needing to have that certificate. So no more code signing for these particular APIs. No permissions, no headaches with do I have the right permissions or the wrong permissions. Basically, leave all your permissions out and you're good to go. The only time you would ever need to add a permission is if you were going to use one of our restricted APIs, which would then cause you to use code signing. But again, we have opened, for the most part, a majority of the APIs on the handset, so that shouldn't be an issue for you. So what the actual user will see in the scenario of looking at the new API setup is that the user will still, in some cases, receive user permission prompts to access the APIs. For example, if you're accessing the PIM information through JSR75, the user still will get a screen that says, do you get permission to access this capability? The user can say, no, yes, or yes during the lifetime of this app running. The reason I bring that up is, one, to be aware that the user will have a prompt, but more importantly, to be aware that the user has the option to say no. And the reason this is important is because in your code, you need to code around, you're going to be prepared for the fact that the user may say no. But don't write your code on the assumption that you will always have access to the API. Make sure that there is a safety net there that you have code that can handle if the user says no. How you handle that in your app is sort of per your own app. Possibly you just want to gracefully grab the fact that there was a security exception thrown, or you may want to prompt something back to the user saying, hey, I was trying to get access to your PIM information, and this is why I was doing it. Let me try it again. You're going to see a prompt. This time, say yes for me. So if we look at the PIM, JSR75 portion of the PIM API, we have a code sample on our website. Again, it's under the developer.sprint.com/instinct area. There's code samples there. We have a sample for 75 specifically working with PIM. In this case, the sample is not only a sample just to show you how it works, but it's also a nice little reusable component. So what you see on the image here on the screen is what you would actually, what the user would actually see if you invoke this usable component, which is saying, basically, I want to open a view into the phone book to look at the phone book data. The user would see this list if a user selected someone, so we go down the list there. Let's say they picked Nathan Smith from the list. The return from that back to your code would actually be a contact object. So what you can do with this code is, one, again, it's nice to be able to show you how PIM works and the fact that it is open. But the other thing is that, again, it is a reusable component. You can take it as is, and basically with 2 lines of code say, open this component, and then consume the results back from whatever the user selected. With the File.io portion of JSR75, we did the same thing again. We built a code sample and a reusable component in one. In this case, it's a file browser. And this file browser can be opened in 2 different modes. You can open it into a directory browsing mode, or a directory selection mode, or a file selection mode. If you look at the screen captures we have there, the top right one, you'll notice that on the 2 top lines, the camera and saved folder lines, there's a plus next to them. That means that the user can select those. So that right there is a screen capture of the directory selection mode. But if you look at the other image capture, you'll see that the actual files, or in this case JPEGs, have pluses next to them, which mean they can be selected. This again is a reusable component, and it's a way for you to present the user with a way to scan through their SD card, but then limit to what they're doing. So for example, if you want to save a file, you may want to open this in the directory mode, so you can say, okay, well, pick which directory you want to go into. So that way they're forced to only picking a directory or exiting. If you wanted to have this in more of an open mode where they're going to open a file, you could open it in the file mode so that they would be forced to pick a file and could not pick a directory as the return result. One thing that as I was going through the slides yesterday reviewing this, I had one of those things that as developers we do a lot of times is we have this instant idea that we can figure out how to make something better or rechange some of our code. So one of the things I realized that I did on this sample is that on the bottom of the screen you see a close button. That's actually a tab button at the bottom. Now I'm now realizing what I probably should have done in that scenario is remove that tab and actually use the dedicated back key that's on the phone. So if you look at the bottom of the phone, you've got your three sort of virtual buttons there. The left one, which is the dedicated back key. Most likely I should have used that. Would have been a more appropriate key to use to fit the rest of the style of the device. So feel free to make that change yourself. I may even make that change and repost that sample. The next one we'll cover briefly is JSR 135, the ability to play audio. This one's fairly simple. Before you did not have a means to play MP3s, MIDI files, things like that within your application. We've now opened that feature up in the API, so it's now exposed to you. We also support streaming through this as well. We do not currently have a code sample up on our site for the streaming capability. Our team is working right now to put a sample together, so within the next week or so we should have an example, a code sample out there for you to show how streaming would work. Again, we know this is a feature that we've seen asked for many times, the basic capability to build your own music player. How do you play MP3s? You can now do that, but then again, more important, the cool feature of being able to support streaming is open. So you can integrate that into your solution. Next one we'll cover is the image capture, so using the camera to capture an image. The sample that we provided sort of helps you work within the constraints of the camera. We do have some constraints in the camera largely related to the memory constraints that are exposed to Java. For this reason, you're limited to the size of the image that you can capture. And this sample will actually show you how what the different sizes that you can use for setting up a viewfinder, as well as the different capture sizes. This is a good sample to put on a real device and actually play with it, so you can sort of get a feeling for what the user sees if you pick a specific viewfinder size, and sort of the positives and negatives of using that. It's important to note that this is only supported on Canvas. You cannot actually add a viewfinder on top of the Sprint Instinct widget library. The basic frame, it will only work on top of Canvas. So if you're using the Sprint Instinct widget library and you want to integrate camera, you will need to have at least one screen that is a standard canvas in order to show a viewfinder.